Howdy, folks. I'm Brian.
I'm Amber.
See, she's zoned into her computer.
My students just took their final exam, so I'm making sure that they all submitted on time.
Yeah, so her students, I don't know if you heard that very well, her students just took their final exam, so she's looking over that and making sure they're all submitted. She's just being a good teacher. So, everyone send Amber an apple. Our first story is titled, Am I a Jerk for Telling My Husband to Get New Dreams and Drop the Fantasy About Living in the Woods? My husband and I are in our late 20s. We started hiking together last summer as a way to get out of the house and get some extra exercise in the age of COVID. I enjoyed hiking for the exercise, and then pretty views and the fresh air and all that. But it connected with him on some sort of spiritual level. He's always wanting to go on longer and longer hikes. He sometimes stays in the woods overnight, and even has stayed for a full weekend twice. He wants to hike through the entire Appalachian Trail. He talks about buying land in the middle of nowhere and building a wooden cabin and living in it, etc. I think this is a bit of a silly dream, but don't judge him for it. But it does become a bit of a problem for me when he wants to leave Friday night to go into a national forest near us, and I don't see him again until Sunday night. And he wants to be gone for months, hiking the Appalachian Trail now. He asked me to join him, but I definitely cannot and don't want to do these things. So I've basically told him that these dreams aren't compatible with married life, and he needs to get new hobbies and dreams he works towards. I told him that he's never going to thru hike and leave me alone for 4 months, and that I'm never moving into a hand-built shack in the woods. He was pretty sad to hear those things, and it made me feel a little bit guilty. Alright, OP. In this kind of situation, I think that neither one of you are jerks. I think this is kind of a fundamental incompatibility. He's discovered a part of himself that is kind of incompatible with your life goals. And either one, you two need to come to some kind of compromise where you two work together and decide what you two are able to come to some kind of like compromise about, or you two just may not be compatible anymore. If this is something he's so passionate about and he loves so much, and you're just not about it at all, then it might just be, the beginning of the end for a relationship here. And this isn't anyone's fault. This is something that he's discovered after you two are already married. This isn't something he knew about himself beforehand. He just kind of really connected with this part of himself that he never even knew he had. And it may be that you two are growing apart, and that sometimes happens in life, and that's just, an unfortunate thing, but it may just be the reality here. Another thing you two can do is you two can go to couples counseling and try to figure out what a third party or an outside view will be able to do to help you two work through these incompatibilities, because there might be still some, common ground you two can approach here. Instead of moving into a hand-built shack in the middle of the woods, maybe he could build a shack and you two could go camping every once in a while there. Maybe not completely move to it, but, just have a weekend or two there. Also, maybe it might be good for you to join him on the occasional camping trip. It sounds like you don't like going camping at all. And if that's the case, and it's just something that you can't stand, and you like the, accommodations of, civilization too much, then maybe there are some other ways you can support him. So, one more kind of note here is you say that these dreams aren't compatible with married life. That's not true. It's not compatible with your married life. There may be other people out there who would be perfectly content with this and would even be thrilled at the opportunity to do these kinds of things. So I wouldn't say that this is a incompatibility in married life. Also, it depends on where your life goals are. Like, for instance, if he wants to hike the Appalachian Trail and you two also want to have kids and he's going to be gone for 4 months while you're raising a kid on your own, that might really be a hardship on you, for instance. If you two have no intention of having kids, then this might be still a hardship on you. But I don't know, maybe you could find it within yourself to, let him do something like this too. I just don't know. I guess it really depends on how passionate he is about this. So, yeah, I mean, I think that, again, you two are going to have a long, hard discussion about where your marriage is going, what you two see in your future, and kind of hash things out from there. Don't be afraid to get a third party involved. Anyhow, take care and good luck. You're the jerk. Instead of focusing on what part of his dream seems impossible to you, perhaps you should focus on what parts of his dreams could be possible within your marriage. Be unconditionally loving and supportive. I would have a hard time being the one reason the person I loved the most couldn't pursue their dreams. In a partnership, I want to evolve together, adding to each other's goals and ideas to the life we build, not influence my partner to succumb to what's most comfortable for me. I feel like you two need to have this conversation open and evolving. Just as you think his desire to be a mountain man and live above the earth is extreme, your reaction to it and telling him definitely no is pretty extreme to me. I agree, you're the jerk. Shutting him down over spending several weekends camping and hiking, and shutting down the idea of hiking through the Appalachian Trail without discussion makes you sound codependent. You can be a supportive partner for 4 months while he's away. You don't want to even entertain the thought. Info. Is he working? And would his work be sustainable with this hobby? And someone else replies, yeah, even if he worked remote in the woods, that often has bad internet. I guess that really depends on where you are, because there are places in Maine where the internet doesn't exist in the woods. There are places in Maine where the internet, high-speed internet doesn't even exist. So maybe that's not the case along the Appalachian Trail, but wilderness areas, if you go too far off the beaten path, you might not have internet. And I think this is a legitimate question to ask. Are they financially able to support this goal of his? So this might be something that he has to work towards. All right, our next letter is titled, Am I a jerk for refusing to help my daughter pay for college? Throwaway account. I'm a 48-year-old male and I have 3 children with my ex. My son Joe, a 24-year-old male, and my 2 daughters, Jane, a 21-year-old female, and Amy, a 19-year-old female. After the children were born, my great-grandmother started a small education fund for each of them that I have now since controlled since her passing. There weren't any specific criteria for this fund within the context of the law or the bank policy because the type of the fund my great-grandmother started. I've added my own money to the fund, and my parents have occasionally put in some cash, but it was never expected. My ex has never put in a dime, but always wanted to have equal control over it, and every time I refused, she would get upset. Over the years, she has tried to say that she needs the money from the fund for expenses for the kids, citing that the child support I was paying wasn't enough. I still refused and said that she just needs to send me the bill and I'll pay for it directly. She didn't want to do that and would shut up after I asked her how she could be so desperate for money for our kids, but refused to give any details. Fast forwarding to when Joe was going through college, and I told my son just to give me enough information so I can pay the school every semester and he'd be good. My ex tried to convince him to get me to give him all the money so that way he could have his privacy. My son did consider it, but decided that he'd rather I just do this for him because he was worried about blowing through all the money. I was proud of him. Jane, however, gave into her mom's way of thinking and insisted that I just give her the entire fund during her second year. I tried to convince her that this is the best way and pointed out how well it worked out for her brother. Jane just called me controlling and said that I don't respect her enough to let her make her own choices. Eventually, I relented, but made it clear that this was all the money that there was for her college. That once it was gone, and she would be on her own if she needed more. Everything seemed fine up until about a couple weeks ago, and Jane called crying, saying that she wasn't going to be able to finish because she ran out of money. I asked her what happened, and surprise, surprise, Jane gave the money to my ex. I let her vent and then told her everything was going to be okay. That while she may not graduate by a certain amount of time, she can still finish school. She'll just need to apply for grants and scholarships, loans, and maybe even take a year off just to work. How I would tell the school how she was on her own so she could get more money. Both Jane and my ex are upset with me because they expect me to pay for her schooling and that I was being horrible for wanting her to struggle with loans. To me, this isn't about being petty, but rather giving Jane a hard lesson. She wanted to be treated like an adult. Well, finding your own way is what an adult does. Joe agrees with me, but now Amy is being pressured to access her funds to help her sister. Technically, I could help, but I'd rather Jane just work for herself. Am I the jerk here? Edited ad because I saw this question and wanted to clarify. 1. Each fund is separate and in each child's specific name. I added money equally to all of them, but technically Joe ended up with the lesser amount because the funds were created at the same time for each child, so Jane and Amy's fund had more time to grow with interest. 2. Also, when each of my kids entered high school, I made them authorized users on one of my credit cards that I always paid in full on time to help build up their credit score, so Jane can use that to her advantage. 3. By their senior year of high school, each of my children were told how much money they would have to go to college, and that if there was any left over by the time they graduated, it was theirs to do with what they pleased. 4. Joe and Jane both went into in-state universities to save money, but Amy is considering going to an out-of-state, so she's really going to need every penny from the fund. She's taking a year off before applying just to work so she can save money. It's one of those reasons her mother and sisters are using it to justify Amy giving Jane some of her money. 5. We are American and living in the United States. All right, OP. I would have a really hard time faulting you in this situation. You told your daughter how much money she had. You told her that if she had any money left over, at the end of it, you would give it to her. And you told her that you would take care of the expenses and payment and be responsible for it while she was going through college. And you cited, Joe as an example which strengthened your case here. It wasn't like you were out there spending, Joe's money and basically, because I hear so many of these stories on Reddit where someone's like, oh, I'll take care of your money. And then, the parent ends up spending it all or something like that. So this was not one of those situations. You were going to be responsible and you were going to help her in the best way that you could. And she made an adult decision and she decided to take out that money and spend it. And you aren't responsible for her poor decisions at this point in time. Now, she's able to take out loans. It sounds like she's probably going to be able to work her way through college, but it's going to be a little more difficult. And the reality is that if you give her this more money, then she's going to end up with more money than the rest of your children. And that's not fair to them. Especially your other daughter, who is taking on a job to basically get more money so she can go through college. She's not over here, Amy is working hard to save up more money because she wants to go to an out-of-state college, and her sister is being a brat in this situation and being like, you need to give me your money because you're working? No, your other daughter needs to work too. And I mean, that's just kind of what's the reality of the situation is. So yeah, I think that in this particular case, you're not a jerk. You were trying to do what was best for them, and they wanted to manage their own money, and they managed their own money, but they did a poor job of it. Hopefully in the future, they do a little bit better job with managing their finances and take a little more responsibility for it, because this was in some ways a hard lesson, but it's a good lesson because now she knows that there's not, there are situations in life where if you overspend and you don't have that money anymore, then there are going to be consequences for it. And I don't necessarily think that you are doing anything wrong in this situation. So yeah. Anyhow, take care and good luck. Not the Jerk, and you're doing yourself a major disservice with this post title. You did help to pay for your daughter's college. Not the Jerk, valuable lesson for your daughter to learn while she's still young, and it keeps it even with the other 2 kids. Yeah. And just hopping on the top comment, no matter what happens, don't give Amy her money. At the end of the day, you're responsible for Amy's education too, and Amy will be pressured if you give her the money, and she might not know how to say no. Stand your ground and look after Amy's well-being. Edited to say, Not the Jerk. Alright folks, that's all the time we have for today. I hope you enjoyed today's video. If you did, consider giving me a like. If you didn't, consider giving me a dislike. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you all tomorrow.
Oh, bye.
You don't have to say goodbye.
No, I want to say bye. Bye, bye, bye.
And we're saying goodbye.